Welcome to Talking Water, our monthly segment where we discuss all things water and wastewater, brought to you by our sponsor, our regional authority, East Gippsland Water. Hello and welcome to Talking Water. In this episode, we'll be talking with John McDonald, who last year clocked up an impressive 30 years as a meter reader with East Gippsland Water. I'm looking forward to this interview very much so, as I've heard that John, who lives in Johnsonville, has some great stories, especially about the early days as a meter reader in East Gippsland. Welcome, John, and thanks so much for joining us on Talking Water this morning.
Good morning, Damien, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you join us. So before we start talking about your meter reading adventures, just a bit of a background on you, John. I understand you grew up in East Gippsland and your family connection to the region's water industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's right, Damien. I grew up in Lakes Entrance, and my dad, John McDonald, was a motor vehicle mechanic, and he had a garage in Marine Parade, Lakes Entrance, for about 20 years. And he was a big influence on me in many ways. And firstly, he inspired me to be a mechanic myself, which I did, learning the trade at Bensdale Tech. And then Dad was also one of the original members of the old Lakes Entrance Waterworks Trust. He was instrumental in getting fresh water to Lakes Entrance, and had a lot to do with getting the first ambulance station built down there, along with Norm Fiedler and many other people. And this sort of created my interest in the water industry, and this led me to be a meter reader for the Tambo Water Board back in the 1990s.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm keen to learn more about the early days of reading meters, John. I've heard the occupational health and safety wasn't as high on the list as it is today.
That's right, Damien. In those days, they hadn't invented that word at all. We worked in twos, and when we were doing bush runs where there might be half a mile between properties, in some places, I'd ride in the back of a utility and jump out at the meter and hop back in again. And of course today that'd be deemed unsafe, yeah. But I'd also be wearing a red and yellow safety jacket that wasn't so safe when it come to navigating paddocks where you had animals, because you'd be looking for the meter, and quite literally it was like a red rag to a bull, and you'd have to get out of the paddock pretty smartly.
Thank you so much, John. Now, I've heard it wasn't always easy to locate and reach some of the water meters too.
Yes, in those days you needed to remember the owners' names and the location of the meter, sometimes by counting the number of paddocks or fence posts. There was no GPS or anything like there is today. So I'd actually enjoy reading the meters during a drought, because you could see the meters a long way away, and then as soon as it rained it'd be up to 4 foot of grass over them and you couldn't see them. Some of the meters were in some pretty difficult locations too. I remember a meter in Meetung that was at the bottom of a gully, and we worked out that the only way to reach it was to tie a rope to the vehicle, lower me down the bank on the rope, and use it to pull me back up onto the road again. Not very OHS compliant those days.
Absolutely not. Thanks, John. And what about when you had to read the meter at the old Kakuna Fun Park at the top of the hill in Lakes Entrance?
Oh, that was a good one. I always look forward to that. They used to have a toboggan run down the side of the hill, and the meter was right up on top of the hill. So when I arrived, the owner, Joe Walters, would have me towed up the side of the hill on a toboggan, and I'd hop off, read the meter, and then grab another toboggan and race down the bottom. I looked forward to that meter on the toboggan. I was there one day on top of the hill reading the meter, and I stopped to admire the view out to sea, and all of a sudden I feel something warm, slimy and wet licking on my ear, and there's a bit of a shock. I spun around, and there was a foot-long tongue in my face. It was a camel. Joe had a few camels up on top of the hill. Of all things, needless to say, I quickly jumped on the toboggan and raced back down the hill to get to the next metre.
Thanks, John. Yes, I'm sure you weren't expecting a camel on your metre reading run at all. Although I heard you've even read metres overseas, John. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's correct. I've been very fortunate working for the Water Board, and I've been able to travel overseas as a metre reader to Raymond Island. I was there one hot autumn day, and I'm standing under a tree for shade, and I feel a sprinkle of rain. So I started humming that famous song of Al Jolson's April Showers. Then I looked up above me to see a large koala who seemed to have a big smile on his face.
Oh, John, any other animal encounters on your metre reading excursions?
Well, of course, the arch enemy of metre readers is usually the barking and biting dog. And that's why I say all metre readers need to carry at least 3 pairs of spare underpants with them. In the early days, my metre reading partner, John Hammerstrom, who we all knew as Hammer, would help me out by distracting or shooing away the dogs while I quickly read the metre. He often saved me from being bitten, but not always. I've been barked at and chased by just about every breed of dog you can imagine, from St Bernards and German Shepherds to Poodles and Jack Russell Terriers. I've had to fend dogs off with shovels, spend hours looking for dogs that escape when I've opened the gate and the dogs raced out, and I've had to watch an angry Weimaraner. It could jump 7 foot and the fence was 6 foot, so you can imagine what that's like. There's another time I'm up in Salisbury Street, Orbost, and a vicious poodle rushed at me, and I've shut the gate behind me and fastened its teeth onto my boot. And the little old lady came out and said, "Ooh, she won't bite." Oh, I said, "Look at this." And I lifted my foot up off the ground with the dog still hanging onto my boot, flailing its feet.
Thank you, John. So I guess the moral of these stories for anyone listening now is that if your metre is due for reading, put your dog inside or in the backyard.
Yes, that'd be excellent.
And have you had any other encounters with local wildlife?
Well, yes, unfortunately, for us rural metre readers, snakes just love the warm security of a cast iron water meter cover. And I've often encountered snakes when I've lifted the cover and it feels a bit heavy, and they curl up inside. And one time I found a 6-foot snake curled up under a meter cover. I've even been bitten once and had to go in an ambulance to hospital, but luckily it was a dry bite and I was okay. Then, of course, there are the bull ants and the electric fences, and, so I go on.
Well, it sounds like the life of a metre reader certainly sounds adventurous.
Yes, it's been an interesting 30-odd years, but lots of fun. I've had wonderful bosses. Being a metre reader, I've met a lot of wonderful people, seen some amazing sights. It's helped me stay fit and active and hopefully do my bit for the community. I wouldn't change it for the world, and I plan to keep doing it as long as I can.
Well, all the good for you, John. Thank you so very much for sharing some of your stories with us today. It's been a lot of fun.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me, Damien.
It's a pleasure, John. You've been listening to the April segment of Talking Water with this month's guest, John McDonald, who is one of the metre readers at East Gippsland Water.